Hi, I'm MacIntosh. I'm the team leader at the MacIntosh Group at RE/MAX River City, and I hope this video finds you and your family well, because let's face it, the most important thing in life is health, and sometimes it takes a horrific event to remind us of that, so please stay well. This situation has affected a lot of us in all kinds of different ways, and I've reached out to a couple of friends of mine, Pastor Matt Ziprick and comedian Lars Kallio, to find out how their lives have changed in the past 30 days. And I'll have my conversations with them right after I talk about the Edmonton real estate market. Obviously, the real estate market here in Edmonton has been affected by COVID-19, but not as much as I thought. There's been more sales than I expected. And that's because there is buyers and sellers out there right now that absolutely have to buy or have to sell. And that's what makes real estate an essential service. Let's go over the numbers. Sales in 2020 were actually outpacing 2019. In fact, when we look at the monthly stats, there's only a 3 to 4% decrease in sales for March of 2020 versus March of 2019. And that's because sales were so strong at the end of February and the beginning of March. But the difference becomes evident when we look at the weekly stats. And in fact, when it was official that COVID-19 became a pandemic on March 11th, about 2 weeks later, after conditions are removed on most transactions, it was where we start to see the difference in sales. In Edmonton in 2019, in weeks 13 and 14, there were 231 and 249 sales. In 2020, there were 140 and 106. When we look in Sherwood Park, the numbers are very similar, as sales dropped from 22 and 37 in 2019 to 11 and 13 for the same weeks in 2020. Sales, which normally rise between January and June, for the first time in a long time are heading in the wrong direction in the early part of the year. Sales are down about 60% right now. So, how do these stats affect value? Prices have dropped just a smidge, about 2 to 4%, depending on what you own and what part of the city you're in. And this is the first time that I can remember ever seeing that in March. Sellers, are you ready for some good news? Well, listings are down as well, about 12 to 14% from the same time last year. Now, for the million-dollar question, Brent, what's going to happen to property values this year? Well, I can tell you by the laws of supply and demand, it looks like property values are going to drop again in 2020. How much? Some experts are calling for an up to 15% drop in value in properties in Edmonton in 2020. So if you're a seller, you want to sell your house as soon as possible. You'll get more money for it immediately than you will at the end of the year. The list price of your home becomes even more important this year. You have to make sure your house is priced in the right price range. Your home has to be the biggest and the best in whatever price range you choose. Otherwise, all that you're going to do is help the competition sell before you. Make sure you're ahead of the curve and not chasing the market down. Who do you know considering selling their house this year? We would love to talk to them as soon as possible to aid them in the sale of their house. As I said before, they're going to get more money earlier in the year than they will later in the year. For buyers, with interest rates ridiculously low, I can't think of a better time to buy a house. Save up your down payment, lock in a low interest rate, and take advantage of this situation, because this is a great time to buy a house. As I'm sure you're aware, it's definitely not business as usual. Buyers are not going to go and look at 10 to 15 homes like they might have in the past. They might look at 1 or 2 in person. The rest, they're doing online. That's why it's more important than ever to make sure that you have professional photography, 3D tours, video, a great description of the property, floor plans, anything that you can put on the internet so that buyers will choose to see your house in person when they are out and about. We've noticed a huge spike in internet traffic. Our website is seeing 3 times the amount of individuals in the past 30 days that we normally see. Our Facebook and Instagram advertising, we're getting thousands of hits from. And our YouTube page is up 900% in the amount of views we're getting on our videos. We would love to have you subscribe to our YouTube page by clicking on the link below. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss seeing any of our great new videos. Now, to the best part of this video, what you've probably been waiting for, my conversation with 2 of the funniest people I know and whose jobs have changed drastically in the last 30 days, Thanks for watching. Matt, how has your life changed in the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, the obvious one is our weekly gatherings. You know, we would have 3 services where people would come here to the location, and now we're on a broadcast over Facebook and you live streaming that way. And so I'm kind of learning how to speak into a camera with people around, which is kind of really bizarre.
And how many people are you getting on your broadcast? Can you tell how many people are watching you on Sunday via the internet?
The stat was like 4.6 thousand views on Facebook.
Wow.
But now again, I don't pretend to assume that that's more than even a 10-second viewing. But still, that's pretty. That's pretty. Like I would have guessed way smaller.
What's been the feedback from your members?
I think it's been an adjustment for them, but people really appreciate it. Especially, you know, it's kind of been a connecting point for many people for their life, and now all of a sudden they're trying to connect in a new way, and so they've received it pretty warmly, and like all of us, kind of finding the new normal with what that means for them on a weekly basis.
So let's talk about your home life. You're married with children. How many kids do you guys have?
We've got 4, and so we made the adjustment too with having them all at home and doing school. Claire's been really good with trying to keep a routine going, and each of them has a bit of an assignment that comes in on a daily basis on email, and so we're keeping them busy that way. I think they're missing that interaction with their friends and the teachers. And that being said, they are trying to connect kind of the way you and I are, just online.
For some of the people watching who have never been to your service on Sunday at your church, is it possible for them to tune in and watch online?
Bethel Lutheran Church of Sherwood Park. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook. It's live streamed and then it's posted later.
Well, I'm now joined by world famous comedian Lars Kallio. How are you today, Lars?
I've never been better. How have you been?
I'm really good. Are you self-isolating?
I am, yeah. We're the day 13 of quarantine because I was coming home from overseas.
And where were you?
I was in Perth last, but I actually flew home from Melbourne. So it was Melbourne, Los Angeles, Denver, Edmonton.
And what were you doing in Australia?
I tell jokes. I was telling jokes in Perth, and then Rottnest Island with the quokkas.
And what made you come home?
You know, I figured I told all the jokes, so I was done. I had completed all of the jokes. No, we were on our way to Tasmania. We were on our way to Launceston, Tasmania for 3 shows, and mid transit we flew from Perth to Melbourne, and then we landed, and I got panicked text, which, if you're going to send your friends text, give it a little bit of information. People wouldn't have known I was flying, but when I opened my phone, 3 different people had sent me the message, get home, get home, get home, get home. And I had no idea what was going on, if it was an emergency in Canada or an emergency in Australia. And so I did a little digging, and it turned out our Prime Minister had said, if you are abroad, you need to return home now, while commercial flight is still an option. That was actually what got me. It was the line in his speech, if you see it, while commercial flight is still an option. I mean, we had a flight in 5 hours. We were flying to Tasmania 5 hours later. We were connecting through Melbourne. Phoned United Airlines, who was great. And my flight home was, to completely just buy a new flight home for me was $901, which I have some friends that are trying to get out of Australia now, and the flights are $2,000, $3,000. So yeah, our Prime Minister, he did get me with that line. If he wouldn't have been as urgent in his mess, I would have continued on to Tasmania, where they've locked down the borders. And then the Premier Tasmania just said, if you do not have a Tasmanian address, get out. All visitors of Tasmania have to leave. And so I would have been there and then had to leave. I had to come home. So yeah, it was his sense of urgency that it looks like we have to go home.
So how has your life changed since getting home?
Well, for the past 16 years, I've done about 400 shows a year, a little more than 400 shows a year for the past decade and a half. And in the past 15 days or 16 days, I've done less than that. There's been fewer than 400 shows. Zero is less than that, right? I wasn't supposed to be coming home till mid-June. this tour that I do each year in Australia and Asia takes a year to put together. It just evaporated. And I really do care more about health. My mom and her husband are great, and I have some siblings. So if we get, I just everybody's friends and everybody's family to come out the other side healthy, and then we can focus on getting back to work as a stand-up comedian.
Well, I'm a huge fan, and maybe we can get you a couple other fans. How do people find you on social media?
Extra Lars. If you're on Instagram, extra, like EXTRA Lars, Extra Lars, and I follow everybody back. So yeah, a bit of a following on Twitter more so. Instagram's fun, but I prefer the cleverness of Twitter.
I think I shared the story with you too about the one guy I haven't had contact with for some time, and he texted me saying, I can check off my bucket list going to church in my boxers.
If you need a comedian to stand 6 feet away from you in your living room, that are available.
Thank you so much for watching. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see some of our future Edmonton real estate market updates, then please consider subscribing right here. Don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss one of our monthly market updates. If you're just wanting to snoop and look at some properties, then please click on one of these 2 links here for some of the incredible properties we currently have for sale. Thanks again. Have a great day.